Hello and welcome to the latest instalment of the Historics podcast. And with me, Mathew Priddy, auction expert, and YouTuber and car fan, Tom Exton.
Hello.
Now we're at Ascot Racecourse, where the going is good. But enough turf talk. We are here to talk about the most outrageous car collections ever and plenty more.
Buying or selling a classic car? Head to historics.co.uk or click below for a free valuation.
Car collections. Whose has taken your fancy? What's big out there? Wowers with some cars and some numbers.
I thought of talking about a couple of clients, really, although well-known clients. First one being Chris Evans, who's well-known, for, especially when he had his white Ferrari lineup, of course, which was, I think, Dino. We had F40. What's it now? A 365. I think there's a GTO. Beautiful.
All in white. Original white
in
or
his
wrapped?
house in Windsor at the time, and I think they were all original whites was the plan. I don't know whether all of them were original white. I don't know that much detail. I'll ask him if he comes along. But there was that particular lineup that was was infamous really when he was in Windsor. But he's always been an eclectic buyer and collector of cars. I remember years ago selling him a Ford Model A at Brooklands. And he came along the next day. I think it was actually possibly after one of the marathon runs he did. And that was it, I'm going to drive it home. And he just drove it all the way home. I think it only lasted about 2 weeks. It was just the ability of saying, I've driven this car.
Yeah.
Imagine going through the great park in that thing. But since then, he's bought all sorts of cars. I think he actually has the British record for a 250 GTO short wheelbase, which I think was £12 million. And I do remember that all coming about, because he probably had to shift a few things to get there. But it's an incredible collection. Couldn't tell you what he's got right now, but he's got to be right up there. And recently he bought the Queen's X-Type estate from us. I think that was November.
Was that him that bought that?
Yeah.
So he bought that in November last year, and then fantastically, actually, for charity, for children in need, he raffled it away.
Yeah.
And interesting point, that car is coming to the Windsor sale. The person that won the raffle for £20
Yes.
has decided that the best thing to do with the car is to find someone that wants to put it in their collection, and he's putting it back for auction.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god.
Amazing that going
full
round and
circle.
round.
Do you know what, that might just be the yo-yo car that keeps on going to an auction.
Provenance car.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Tom's not shy of having a raffle or two, are you, Tom?
No. We'll see.
So he's got a great collection, big on Ferraris.
Yeah.
And some really lovely stuff.
I think I saw him at Carfest last year doing the rounds in a Roma. No, not a Roma. Sorry, that's doing him down. A Monza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
So he's got some modern silliness.
He also bought the Chitty Bang Bang, the only working Chitty Bang Bang, some time ago, I think now, for I don't know how much, an awful lot of money. I remember him having that. Massively eclectic taste, which is great. I think that's always lovely with collectors when they just want to experience.
They're
all
not
of
just
the
showing
cars.
off; they're buying what they like.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's
there's
a
plenty of
massive
showing off
difference.
as well, I'm sure. But I think
a little bit of that.
likes the idea, I think, of having driven everything, not just borrowing it off their mates.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Good man.
How about yourself?
Well, a couple of years ago, I had the good fortune to interview Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, and he, like Chris Evans, has got a 250 GTO, and he said that he bought it about 40 years ago. And yeah, exactly. So in today's value, then how much are they worth at the moment?
Proper cars are up over £15 million.
No, 50 million. How much do you think he paid for it over 40 years ago? And he reckons he was stitched up at the time as well.
Oh, I don't know. Ye olde money, it always confuses
So
me.
40 years ago, was it even £1 million then?
50 grand?
Come on, tell us.
£30,000.
Oh,
see?
my
I know. And he's so lovely and thinks it's so, it's a cracking wheeze and everything. And he was just, he says in a charming way that he feels incredibly clever by doing it. But he was unbelievably lucky, he said, because if he was really smart enough, he'd have gone and bought two.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The nice thing about a car like that, and being Ferrari, is that it will never lose that value.
No.
So he has no stress to sell it and cash it in.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have to. It's just
He's
always
probably
there.
all right as well, I suspect.
I'm sure he's doing okay.
Though he did say he had to sell an Alpha of some pedigree to pay for a VAT or tax bill, something like that, along the way, as I'm sure many collectors will understand.
I'll keep my mouth shut at this point.
And then just sort of going for future tips, he thought that the McLaren GTR F1 would be a good one.
It's always
Comparable.
I think it's actually easier to pick cars that will escalate in value at that top end than it is sort of down at 50,
Yeah,
60, 70,000 pounds, because
Yeah.
there are so few of them built and they are that special that it's actually easier to start picking, I think. But then that's the luxury of having that much money, I guess.
I know,
And
exactly.
you've got at that level of the top end cars, you've got the people that are buying them that are just blank check level.
Yeah.
They just don't really. The price is just an admin point.
Yeah.
They just need to get it, so they don't really care. Whereas your sort of 60, 70 grand car, there's people actually care what they're spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, here. Talking about money being absolutely no object, the largest private collection with over 7,000 vehicles in
Oh
it,
my God.
worth £4 billion, is owned by the 29th Sultan of Brunei. Over 200 BMWs, over 400 Ferraris. I mean, it's just
It's a bit much,
ridiculous.
innit?
Well, I know.
A bit
it's like,
excessive.
when do you get the time to actually
Well,
drive
they
them?
clearly
Or
don't.
even see them.
We see a lot of them come onto the market sort of 10 years later, and without being disrespectful, they're always super low mileage, very collectible cars, but they all require significant recommissioning because they've just sat and done nothing.
Yeah.
And often things have perished, and clearly they only sell the fringe of the collection, I bet. But I think it was a 928 that we had a couple of auctions back here, and they said that there were 45 of them. Virtually
God.
identical,
Yeah.
just in different colours,
Yeah.
that they just bought, the family
Yeah.
had bought. 45. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But because they can, because as you say, numbers are admin with those chaps. But the nice thing actually is when they do come out of those collections, they can then be reconditioned and they can become one of those really collectible cars. Because who else is buying a car at that level and just not using it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, in his collection as well is this here, which I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh my word.
So that's a Bentley Java, and it was a concept car shown at Geneva in 1994. Wheelbase similar to a 5 Series BMW, and it was designed to be packaged around a 3.5 litre twin-turbo Cosy V8. So
sounds like a-
nice under the bonnet,
Nice.
but it never made it to production.
It just looks like a Continental with just
Yeah.
slightly
It's gone to a max power.
Rover-esque lights.
Bad boy bonnet on it.
But, right, so it didn't make it to production, but the Sultan of Brunei loved it so much that he ordered 18 of them in 3 various body styles. So he's got those in his collection as well.
Oh, goodness.
I know.
But that kept the lights on at Bentley for a few years.
Well, exactly.
So those concept cars and those show cars are always the ones I really love because they
Yeah.
tend to be 2 or 3 of them made.
Yeah.
One won't work and it will just be sort of
Yeah.
made out of clay. One will have a random engine from a different car, and then it's always designed by a crazy bodywork. And I like the fact that most of it's impractical. And actually, if it were to go to, like any concept car, if it actually goes to production, all of the really cool stuff just taken off.
Yeah.
And when I grew up, I was like the idea when Alfa Romeo and guys started hiding door handles and things. Well, why isn't everyone doing that?
Yeah.
Of course, because practicality-wise, everyone suddenly started loving a big Volkswagen-style
When you
clink.
come out of Asda, you're trying to find a door.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work, does
Also,
it?
the McLarens, you used to wave underneath the wing mirrors, and you're like, come on. Everyone's going, what on earth is he doing?
Voodoo magic.
I got that on a Tesla at the moment, to be fair. I haven't set up the app properly because I've got no idea how to do anything. I have to stick my card to the window of it, so it's back, and I've got full hands, and I'm trying to like shove my wallet up against the window.
This
It's
was
not
on
a good
that-
look.
Is it like at the credit card entry
Yeah, and it's
thing?
destroyed this plastic patch where you have to tap the card, and it's just scratched.
But all of that craziness on the sorry, off on a tangent here. The back of my wife's Discovery, it's got one of those wave your foot under to
Yes.
open. Yeah, but the only problem is it also when you're stood there and your foot triggers it when it's open. So you're loading the boot and you haven't realised it's.
Or if you have a little doggy and it wags its tail in the wrong point, that's curtains. There is another car collection that I wanted to bring to your attention, and one. It's the British Motor Museum at Gazon in Warwickshire, which is what we can all go and see. And I know that it's half-term week for a lot of people this week. So that would be a good thing to go and see because they have got over 400 vehicles in there, pretty much everything that Britain has got to offer. From the first Land Rover to Lady Penelope's FAB1 Pink Machine, and also this, which I thought I would show you.
Lovely.
So this is the sole surviving prototype of a 1952 Triumph TR2, and it set the land speed record for a 2-litre car in 1953.
How cool is that?
What was that speed?
We're on to quizzes already. We didn't prepare for this so early on.
I'm going to go over and keep
1953.
peppering
Land
us.
speed, 1953,
120.
Okay,
119.
125.
See, I went there.
And how
I'm
much?
actually not cheating for
No,
once
I know,
either.
you're not.
My eyesight's not that good.
And how much is it worth?
Oh, worth.
Yeah.
Oh, subjective.
$100,000.
£150,000.
250 is its value at the minute. Anyway, you can go and see that and many more for an adult priced ticket of about £15. So that's a real accessible
I think,
Yeah.
drag
collection that you can go and see.
Drag your children along, kicking and screaming, make them love cars.
Yeah, especially British cars,
Yes.
because everyone loves
Secure
British
my
cars.
future in this industry.
Jay Leno, he has a pretty
He does.
awesome collection,
I'd
doesn't
love
he,
to go
over in the
there.
States?
He's got some cool stuff. I've never been there. I've been to Manny Koshbin. Do you know Manny Koshbin?
I've
that
heard of
rings a
him.
bell.
Now, this is a YouTube sort of area, isn't it?
He
Go on.
brands himself as the American dream, and I think to every extent actually he is. He's this kind of bloke. I think he came over to America with absolutely nothing, and now he's got property empire and all sorts of stuff. Incredible car collection. I went over there must be best part of 10 years ago. It was the first time I'd seen in the metal Carrera GT. And he had like Salines, all sorts of madness. And it was just this bloke in this unit with all these crazy cars, and I wasn't even doing YouTube or anything at the time.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, this must be a few quid.
Do you know one thing I really do quite like about the YouTube generation with these car collections is that there is a point to them as well. Like, it sounds odd because with some of the larger car collections, you just don't get to see them. And
Yeah.
it's one man and he gets to take out a couple of cars a year and then the rest of the time they're sort of mothballed. But with the YouTube guys, it's a constant non-stop. There's always something because
And
you
it's
want
driving
content.
demand as well, because even Manny back then obviously had the funds to pretty much buy the moon, but he kind of had a relatively small unit and he wasn't on the internet doing all the kind of social media stuff. And now he's a YouTuber. He seems to be buying a car every 5 minutes. He's just buying everything under the sun, just not hoarding, but he's just got the most insane collection.
I reckon if you spoke to people like Chris and said, like, if you could jack everything in, the early mornings on radio and stuff, and all you have to do is just talk about your cars all day
Just
long and
piss
take them
around
out
in
for a
your cars.
drive.
Great.
And you can make that money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Top tip.
Yeah.
Bin the day job. Just go and play with cars.
I can vouch it's the closest thing to stealing a living you'll ever get. So, go for it.
What is lovely though is seeing things like the Porsche that you saw for the first time in the
Yeah.
flesh. So sometimes I treat our historics auctions as a bit of a sort of collection in itself, because I come across cars that I've never seen in the flesh before.
There's a Kingsley Range Rover I've never seen one before. There's always something, and I've been doing this for nearly 15 years now, and there's always something. I've never seen one of those.
Yeah.
I've known about them. I've never seen one, and it's brilliant to see these things that other people have to go and find.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But on the auction, so talking about those concept cars, there was another collection that I wanted to highlight. This is another customer of ours. This is the man that was famous for making the little tickets at deli counters.
Oh yes,
Many
number
years
45.
ago.
You're
Exactly.
up.
So he invented that. Then off the back of that, he went into property, but not houses and flats. What he did was he bought lock-up garages. Now, from my notes, let me-
Ooh.
I don't tell you
And
how many
everything
he had.
that's in there. It's like a treasure.
No, it was 14,000 lock-up garages.
Empty or
Well, he rent
with
them
contents?
out, bought them and then rent them out, I guess.
Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
So he became known as sort of Mr. Lockup. But then, of course, those lock-up garages, all in South East of England and London, property. So he's a self-made
for
man,
him.
very well.
Lovely.
Named Roger Dudding. He's a lovely man. Bought and sold from lots of auctions, including us. And there's a couple of cars he bought specifically for me. And on that prototype, there was an AC prototype that was by Zagato, which he purchased back at Brooklands, I think it was about 3-4 years ago, which is in his collection. His collection now is 425 cars, one man, all from little deli counters. But he's got fantastic, well, again, what I like, massively eclectic. He likes to have one of everything and not necessarily the most expensive cars in the world. So he used to, at one point, I think for probably 2 years, all of us auction houses genuinely would not compete with one another because Roger was on a massive spending spree. He was a brilliant. and he was by no means would be the person that just keeps buying for the sake of buying. He loved a deal. The fun was in buying. But he would come along and without no word of a lie, we'd have one, maybe two transporters outside that the transport company would be taking Roger's cars to his
Dedicated.
place. He's had to spend, I think, £7 million building himself a storage facility for his cars. I think it's Studio 434 it's called now. They do rent cars to the film industry and so on and so forth. But again, just massively eclectic, fantastic.
What a
Loves
bloke.
buying.
Yeah.
Just loads. You look on his website, but the one thing he's got, which I thought, I still don't get to this day, Roger, if you're watching, I'm sorry, it's more you than me. Aston Martin Lagonda, the old wedges.
Oh, yeah.
And why is that relevant? There's one just over there.
Yeah, we have one.
So
don't
he's
we?
got 14 of these things.
What?
Would he like 15?
I'm thinking he might like 15. We'll find out. Next
does he
time
like them, or is he just trying to keep them all off the road and out of sight?
But he's like that. It's sort of a lot of collecting, and then sort of once he's got 3 or 4, 5, and suddenly now he's got the most amount in the world, so he's now the world's foremost collector of them, I guess.
Do you reckon he'll be in on that?
I think he could be. That's beautiful,
Roger.
the one over here. We'll find out next time.
Yeah.
If you have a look at our results, because this is on afterwards. It might be Roger's car by then.
Yeah, we are actually filming this ahead of our May auction at Ascot.
Yep.
So
But you'll be seeing us ahead of our Windsor auction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you can hear any noise in the background, the whole Ascot racecourse is preparing itself for Royal Ascot, the big horse race, which is coming up in a few weeks' time. So apologies if there are any unusual noises.
We've removed our high vises, though. That's the
exactly.
main thing.
I was just thinking, what would be terrific for sort of your first ever car collection? So I was thinking a sports car, a Porsche for that, a 4x4, so I'm going Range Rover, possibly a 3-door CSK, old school, and then a big GT car, like a Bentley Continental GTC. There is one at the auction as well. So I could even actually start my auction here.
Yeah,
Start my car collection
you
here.
could, yeah. I see. I'd probably go even more eclectic again, slightly off the wall cars, because I work with everything else I see. But
What 3 would you go for then?
I'd quite like to go sort of Maserati or Lamborghini,
Okay.
but perhaps more obscure for the sports car. For a GT, a big GT. Do you know what? Actually, I quite like things like an Aston Martin DBS. Or
Nice.
Vanquish, maybe something like that for the sort of more GT cars. I don't know if it's sporty GTs. Yeah. And then, what else would I quite fancy? I'd be tempted to get one of the big American cars because from a collector's point of view, you don't want to use it every day.
Like
they're,
a Cadillac
they're bonkers.
or a Hummer.
Huge Cadillac.
Yeah.
That's
Ziff on cue.
You could actually get like 6 or 7
One
of your
behind the
friends in
camera
there, and that would be a great day out once a year.
Yeah.
So I think that probably maybe that.
Yeah. Do you agree with the sports?
I do.
4x4
I think
and
I'd go any 911, any Range Rover, and then some
we'll
sort
share
of
collections.
convertible Bentley or something.
Do you know what I haven't done? Alfa Romeo. I'd have to shift one out for an Alfa Romeo.
Okay.
I don't know which one.
Fair enough.
Niche.
But that's good.
I like an Alfa
At least
Romeo.
we all agree
You
on
like
a
hassle
category.
by the sound.
I do like
you
hassle.
enjoy hassle.
Yes. I'm married, I have 2 children. That's life now.
Hopefully they don't watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, I'm boring.
I think it's worth just flagging up the fact that there are certain cars which have high service costs and quite sort of low intervals where you have to go and get them serviced. McLaren SLR, for example, £20,000 per service, and that's 10% the value of the actual car.
I've used this line a lot before, but I've had a client before who's sold a McLaren SLR through me because he said it was cheaper to run his helicopter.
Really?
There's a
I don't know how.
Right.
Helicopters presumably are not.
They're not that cheap, I guess, but I think at the time that was when you had to go to Mercedes McLaren at Weybridge, and it was astronomical. I think it's got a little bit cheaper now, but I think it was like £15,000 start price for a service. Start price.
I think a lot of those cars, they do get to that point where the specialists start taking over and start being able to make their own parts and cracking the software and stuff and knowing how to work on them.
Yeah, well, it's the workarounds, isn't
Apart
it?
from Veyrons, which are always going to be
I
prohibitively
know
expensive.
of a Veyron, I won't say where, but there's a Veyron in London being worked on by someone that is not Bugatti, and I'm thinking that's brave. That's incredibly brave.
To the point people are putting aftermarket wheels on because they can't face the cost of the tyres and the wheels. They just someone had ADV make wheels for the Veyron.
Wow.
So they didn't have to keep spending
But I've seen
45
that-
grand on a set of tyres.
I've seen the Ondinos, like the old Commodore wheels, they take them off, put them in the garage, and they get replicas put on. One, because they're better built, actually, because the originals are worth so much money, they want to damage them.
So, and then by the time they come to sell, they'll put the originals back on just to keep the provenance.
And it's top tip really, but a lot of these like GT cars we were talking about, which have got sort of 10 years old now, a Bentley's a prime example, because to own a Bentley GT, Continental GT or GTC, the assumption is you can afford to buy a £150,000 car and then run it.
Yeah.
But 10 years on, they're £20,000-25,000, so
buy,
incredibly affordable. But the assumption still is that you can afford to run a £150,000 car.
Yeah, parts don't appreciate with it.
So these specialist guys are brilliant at the workarounds. And I remember a DB9 Volante, and it was a yaw sensor. The yaw sensor of this particular year was in the behind the dash. If you go to Aston Martin, they have to charge you like 3 days' labour to get the dash out, to get to this little tiny yaw sensor, which was worth £70, replace it, and then put everything back in. You go to the specialist, no, actually what we do is we cut one of the attachments off, which it doesn't need both, it's just because it's over-engineered at the time. We can then turn it sideways through the stereo, turn it back, affix it, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff like that now.
You know, so you look for a good specialist. They often know the cars.
And cross-pollination as well. You'll often find, like particularly old Lambos, a lot of those parts are from like a VW Caddy or something.
Maseratis and Citroens back in the day.
Yeah, and like Fiats, Ferraris. There's all sorts of cross-pollination, and actually the parts are like 50p off eBay.
So to do it yourself is basically what you're saying.
If you're me, no, don't do it yourself. Leave it alone. Stay 3 meters away at all times with any tools. But give it to someone who's switched on. And there's loads of guys now that are like super decent at it.
Guys and girls.
Guys and girls, yeah. Generic term, guys, but yeah.
Right, shall we have a look at the news?
The news,
at the moment, the
please.
news. So, autonomous cars. Ford recently has the first hands-free driving system that's been cleared for use in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the UK government approved the use of Ford's Level 2 autonomous system, allowing for hands-off, eyes-on, driving on motorways, just over 2,000 miles of motorways, including the M25 and parts of the M40 for us over here. Hands-free, up to 80 miles an hour, but obviously it's 70 because that's the legal limit.
Yeah.
So why is it up to 80?
So, and this is on Mustang Mach-E electric cars you can get via a subscription service. So, what do we think about that then?
I cannot get my head around. I understand autonomous cars. I understand when you watch a futuristic movie and everything's autonomous, because everything being autonomous makes sense. But when you've got an MGA out there from the 1950s on the same road as an autonomous Mustang, that is a recipe for disaster to me. And I understand all the technology, but the problem is I think until everything's the same, there's just inherent danger. And
but there's never going to be a time when 100% of the road is going to be switched on.
Well,
everyone's
no,
autonomous.
exactly.
So we've got to start.
That's why I'm
slowly.
surprised that the road network didn't become. But I suppose that's the problem, isn't it? You know, we have train lines for that. But if it was one road network for everything that's autonomous, it would make a sense, or a lane. But I don't know. It does slightly frighten me. The first time, I haven't done it yet, but the first time I go in one and take all the hands off, I'm sure I'll be sweating because it just frightens the life out of me. I don't even like that distance cruise control.
No, I to be honest, I don't ever use cruise
No.
control. I like to be fully in control myself, but I have experienced the autonomous hands-off thing, and you are right. It is eerily spooky, and you sort of, your hands are hovering, just ready to get back in control.
Can you play on your
but
phone and stuff then?
You're not allowed to.
Eyes on the road.
Yeah.
Oh,
and they have
okay.
computers that tell you you're not looking. So
you can't, it's
I
not,
didn't know
what's
this
the
the
point
day.
then?
So the car, my daily, I'm driving along. I had no idea it did this, and I'm fully aware there was a cyclist over there, but it decided that the cyclist was a risk and slammed on my brakes.
Wow.
What happened?
Yeah,
It
my
doesn't.
Tesla's
Who
always
told
having
me
a
that
go
that
at
had
me.
that on there?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I always find, this is another thing I find slightly spooky about this whole autonomous driving scenario, is it keeps telling me to wash. My car tells me to wash it. I mean, it's like a nag.
I've not experienced that before.
Honestly, you wash your car,
Is this
nothing
the
works.
McCann?
So it's got a big bowl at the front which does the sensing, right?
So your sensors are
it
being
keeps
clogged
telling me
up.
it's
Okay.
dirty.
Yeah.
I'm like, honestly, my car is telling
Just
me it's
wipe
dirty.
the sensors.
But then, if that's it, that's simple. If I drive through a muddy puddle, and then my sensors are gone, and I'm autonomous with something, what happens then?
I did have a friend, he was in a Tesla on the motorway and it was raining and the Tesla just slammed the brakes on in the middle of the motorway, like outside lane.
And
Because
also-
it felt that the rain was an
Something
object.
just wigged it a little bit and it just panicked.
And this is something from experience,
When?
and you'll probably know this. When you're driving an old car, for instance, you can't stop as quick as the car in front of you. Now, if something in front of you stops for no real reason on on a tack, a 2021, 22 car, it stops like that. If I'm behind you in a slightly older car, my braking distance is more like part of the highway code. So you look ahead, but if there's no reason for it to slam its brakes, you're going to.
But you could say that the person in front, even if it wasn't autonomous slamming its brakes on, was like another car that had just suddenly broken down. So that
It's all
not
it's a bit like the smart
necessarily
motorways things, isn't it? It's you can see where the progress is going. I think
Yeah.
it's the middle part that's going to be spooky.
I honestly don't think us human beings, we're all quite ready for it yet. And there's
I don't think some people are ready enough to
irresponsible-
drive. So I think I think it's going to be case by case, but some people could do with their car driving for them.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it's a bit like being on the train going to an appointment. It's easier to sit there and something else does the work, and you can be on your phone and your laptop. I know you can't do it with a car, but it's stress-free. And if you're doing long hours at work and you're in traffic, then of course you don't want to drive because it's just sat behind another car on a motorway.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. It's the transition that frightens me.
Yeah, I know, I
I
understand.
think I'd be more likely to fall asleep. Not that I ever would fall asleep or nearly fall asleep behind the wheel, but we've all been there and be super tired. But the only thing keeping you awake is actually,
Some engagement.
yeah,
Yeah.
involving yourself. But if you just sat there, I mean, you're gonna nod off, aren't you?
So if you
Surely.
could design your dream interior for your autonomous car, would you have a bed in there then? Would that work for you?
Yeah, I'd love to say I wouldn't be able to sleep, but I'd be out like a light. Yeah, I'd put full trust in it and go to sleep.
Yeah.
See
What about
happens.
you? What would your interior be? Games room?
All I just suddenly in my head was, oh my God, imagine what James May's interior would be. He'd have a log burner, a smoking couch. I just like a sofa, really,
Yeah.
and then like just sort of lounge on the sofa and watch a bit of telly.
Movies or?
Movies, just
Yeah.
sit there and just
Yeah.
zone out, really. I mean, although you now have to keep your eyes on the road, you know that in 20 years' time, that is going to be the ultimate point of it. There's no point in having an autonomous car if you happen to go
No, exactly.
like that.
There are different levels, like hands off, eyes off,
There's-
feet
if,
off.
if you're like this around a steering wheel, like, oh my God, there's no point in that.
Yeah.
But eventually, of course, they are just going to say, well, that's it. You don't
Yeah.
even need put the
I do
blinds
find-
across.
Yes, that is the ultimate
Yeah.
goal, isn't it?
In the Tesla, when it's doing its kind of not autonomous, but like kind of driving and keeping the speed and whatever, and
Yeah.
keeping you in the lane and whatever, I do test it, and it's very jerky. I don't know whether it's just that.
I find
it's
that
kind
with
of very, and then sometimes it panics a bit, and it's kind of lurching you around. So I don't think.
I find the same with the speed control thing. You sort of
horrible.
Yeah.
And if someone pulls into the lane, you know, some people do. They just like come into the lane into your stopping distance. The car will slam the brakes on. It won't just back off. It will just instantly.
because
think,
it hasn't yet got that ability to understand that they can see it. But that's where the frightening AI stuff's coming
Oh,
in,
yeah.
because it will then. And then, let's be honest, then Terminator will come into the whole world will end.
I got so scared watching the Terminator movie,
Yeah.
I don't know, in my 20s, that I actually left the cinema and
It's, oh my
just
God.
got too scared.
So Terminator's going to happen, then we're going to become batteries like in The Matrix, and then we'll just be subconscious. Yeah, all that's going to happen, is it?
we'll be gone by then.
Doom
I
and
think.
gloom. Oh, anyway, let's have a jolly quiz.
Yeah,
shall we?
let's do
Just
a quiz.
perk
More
ourselves
quizzing.
up. Now, last week, because obviously we are, how we're filming this, last week was the Imola Grand Prix. By the
not.
time, or not, yeah, exactly. By the time this comes out, we will have had the Monaco Grand Prix, which Tom's going to.
I know, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
No, we
don't
don't
want to
want
say
to
anymore.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring it up earlier, but
You
yeah,
should
no.
did. You've
It's the first thing I said. I came in yelling it.
Exactly, we're both very jealous. I have been before. Monaco is my.
I've only ever been there
Favourite,
for the
I think.
classic. I've not been for Monaco itself. I just don't. No one invites me.
Well, we asked Tom.
Tom
if-
doesn't like me enough, obviously.
No, well, we
I'm there
asked.
flogging my wares. Don't worry, I'm working. I'm
flog-
working very
I'll flog
hard.
your wares for you if
Yeah.
you need to.
Well, Tom
Someone's
said that.
got
I
to.
said, "Are you going on any boats?" And he said, "Well, I've got 2 options." So surely he could just throw you
One
a,
of which
a
is
crumb
mine.
option. Right. So because last week's Imola Grand Prix was cancelled because of those awful sort of rain and floods in the area, we thought we might be missing out on a little bit of F1. So, little quiz: who was the youngest driver ever to win an F1 race?
Was it Max?
Yes. What was his age?
I think 18. Maybe lower.
Was he 20?
Was he 20? I thought he was 18.
No, maybe yeah. He's probably 18.
Closest, Mathew Priddy, 17 years, 5 months, 15 days.
wow.
Yeah, I know. 17. What were you doing at 17?
Climbing trees, throwing mud.
I know.
Nothing much has changed.
Wouldn't trust me with the car.
Who was the first woman to score points in Formula One?
Oh, I didn't know that happened.
Oh, I don't know.
Layla Lombardi.
When was that? That was a couple of years back?
No, back in the
Was it
early,
Wave? Was it?
yeah, early days.
Must brush up.
Early days.
Shameful.
Who won the first Grand Prix in 1950? Giuseppe Farina. See, you can
about to say
take
that.
all of these lovely stats with you to Monaco and just, wow your chums.
Screaming them on yachts at people. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go down well.
You won that just like Giuseppe.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Farina. In the 1963 Belgian Grand Prix, Jim Clark went from 8th at the start to win at the end. But how far behind him in second place was Bruce McLaren? What was the gap in time?
Started in 8th, finished in 1st.
Yeah.
12 seconds.
Okay.
A minute.
5 minutes.
Wow.
Imagine watching that.
What happened?
But the back then the Belgian Grand Prix was a particularly
yes, yep.
massive, long track. So
wow.
yeah, and he lapped everyone apart from second place man.
He took to get out and do a dance before we go over the line.
Well, how knackered would you be at the end of it as well? Anyway, in which year
Proper
did Michael
drivers.
Schumacher... Yeah, proper. In which year did Michael Schumacher first race for Ferrari?
No idea. 99.
91.
96. Who was Schumacher's first Ferrari teammate? This I couldn't quite remember that, so I had to...
I remember Eddie Irvine, but that wasn't his first, was it? Was it Eddie Irvine?
No idea.
Congratulations, Priddy.
Was it?
Yeah.
So I was then thinking I was wrong, thinking it must have been someone of more pedigree and he came into the B driver.
Yeah, I know.
But clearly he must have come in as like, your number... Sorry, Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you think, Barrichello was... That's sort of my biggest memory of a teammate.
Well, normally,
so-
normally drivers come in as a B driver, don't
Yeah,
they? And then
yeah.
they sort of surpass their teammate.
Okay, and finally, name these two people. But that's not the quiz, because obviously you can name them.
Mansell at
Yep.
the bottom.
And
No idea who that top chap
that's
is.
Nico Rosberg's dad. That's Keiki.
Really?
Yeah. But what I want to know, the big question of the quiz, who has got the better moustache?
Oh, Kiki.
Keiki.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
got
don't
that
like.
Drew.
I'm not big on the Tom Selleck style, you know.
Much as I love Tom
Yeah.
Selleck, Keiki Rosberg.
Kiki looks like he'd be drinking like a big beer, whereas
He's got an...
whereas you think with Mansell it's just a glass of milk. I don't know why that's come into my head.
No comment.
No comment whatsoever. Oh, right. Any other business that anyone would like to bring to the table?
Oh, well, if anyone is obviously watching and thinking of selling their car, we are consigning for the Windsor sale. It's the summer sale, which you're not going to be with us at.
No, I'm away on vacances. I know, it's the first one that I'll have missed in
Yes.
3
we just
or
call it
4
off?
years.
But you've
Suck
heard
it
that.
off.
You always
Yeah,
got to be
it's good.
careful when you leave because whoever steps
I
in
know.
might be better. So
This actually
normally-
might be my last podcast.
Who are we going to get?
Sure. Okay, apply for Vicky's
Yeah,
job.
anyone, please.
If
Do
you
a good
can
job
just
of it. Get rid of
email in to auctions@historics.co.uk to be Vicky's stand-in for Windsor.
And you have to auctioneer, so that's part
We
of
shouldn't
my
be too
role.
rude. She
And-
carries us every single time.
No, I
She-
don't.
We shouldn't be
We're
too
in
rude.
right trouble. So
Okay.
yes, but that is obviously
Suck it
coming
off.
up. It's not that long off. So if you have got a car, if you want to consign, if you want to speak to one of the auction specialists, please do email us. If you want to, pop any comments on, we'll follow up and have a chat with you. So that's on July the 22nd at Windsor.
And how else can anyone see us if they want
Oh, I know
more,
where you're
more,
getting
more.
at. Yes. So if you're not following on Instagram, you need to be doing that because there's a little sneak peek of all the cars ahead of the next auction on there. Is there not?
Yes,
There is.
yep.
Yes, there is. There's little teasers the whole time on there, so you should be following on there. And also subscribe on YouTube. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're just listening on Spotify or wherever it is you get your podcast, subscribe on YouTube as well because there are full videos and auction preview videos on there as well. All the lots ahead of the auctions too.
Yeah, so it'd be lovely to see you at one of the auctions and maybe you could start your own car collection with us.
Yes, I can advise you on that.
You can indeed.
All of the ones I've consigned.
And I can give you terrible advice on how to be a YouTuber as well if you really want that.
We'll get a lot for that.
Right, until the next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.